People at the top.
Oh, okay. Angelica, are we ready to go?
Sorry, y'all, it's taking a little bit longer than usual. I'll go ahead. It looks like it just connected. Go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the July meeting of Buncombe County, North Carolina Home and Community Care Block Grant Advisory Committee. I can look around the room and we're missing a couple of folks, but I think we'll just move right along and start the conversation about priorities a little later on in oh, there's Deborah. Hi, Deborah.
Hello.
In our agenda. So housekeeping, any revisions to the agenda or can we approve the agenda? Your your motion, do I get a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any objections? Hearing none, I approve of the agenda. With regards to the meeting minutes, any revisions to the meeting minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to
Excellent.
approve.
Okay. The meeting minutes are now approved. Okay, first things first, the bad news. Let's see, I guess it was July 3rd. We got notification that the block grant allocations have come through. And it was less than what we estimated. So on the agenda, you can see we were, the county was approved for $1,682,239. And we had used the estimate of 1.7 million. So based on our prior conversations, what I did do is look at proportionally reducing everyone. And thank you, Suzanne, for double checking my math here. And so we were down $17,761. And I applied it to everyone, including Mountain Mobility. So Billy's shaking her head. Is that acceptable?
Yes, they weren't too happy about it, but we just told them how we reduced everything across the board, and that was it.
Okay.
They said they would have to make up for it, so it wasn't it was gonna be painful for them to make up that money, but they accepted it, but begrudgingly.
Okay.
Well, how much was it for that?
$5,000 if you look up
Oh,
there.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't send this out because I wasn't sure what the conversation, the result of the conversation was with Mountain Mobility. So after this this session, I can send this out to everybody.
So it got reduced by 1%.
And it was an equitable way to do it, to reduce everyone proportionally. It was very equitable, so.
Wasn't something we were happy to do.
Right.
That really is what it is. Yeah, I don't know if everybody heard Suzanne, but we were not happy with the reduction. But we did what we had to do.
Yeah.
So. So it is what it is. Now, do we have to resubmit formally to the commissioners or how does that work? the logistics work, Billy?
Well, Allison can talk more about it, but, she did present the new, HCCBG funding as well as the Buncombe County supplemental aging funding to the commissioners at a recent meeting, and I can have Allison talk about that.
Allison?
Hello. Yeah, everything was approved by the commissioners. The county funding plan, the new numbers that were already approved, the allocations that the committee approved. So, I mean, everything has gone through.
Okay, so now, in terms of, the Buncombe County Supplemental Aging Funds, so things are starting to work through contracting, is that kind of where that is?
Yeah, I mean, we've completed all of the contracts as of, I think, yesterday. It's just a matter of they've not all gone out because there's still some sign-offs, but the majority of them have, and they will go out by the end of this month. So, yes.
Oh, excellent, excellent.
Yep.
And just so
So-
folks know, I did go to the commissioners meeting last week.
Mhm.
I know time has been flying by.
It was last week.
And there was a lot of folks there on another issue about the woods over in UNC campus. But I did thank them very vigorously, and I rattled off all the names of the recipients and again, thank them very much, so.
Yeah, I think that was excellent that you did that. So thanks for coming and doing that. But yeah, we're all good to go. Everything's approved. Contracts can start. So people are should be providing services this month. So
Excellent. Excellent. And I want to appreciate, I didn't realize you were in the room the other night, and it was good to see you as I was walking out, going to another meeting.
well, good. I was glad you were there. Thank you for being there.
So what we can do next then is look at the expenditure reports, and again, I want to thank Zach and Zoe. I know year end can be crazy. But if I look at the units of service report from Zach, he's looks like everybody was made 100%, and all the funding was allocated. Is that a correct statement?
Yes. Trying to get to it, but yes, you are correct. Okay. There it is.
Here it is.
Okay.
So you can see the percentage of 1, 2, 3, the fourth column from the right is pretty much everybody's at 100%. So that's a good thing.
Yes, and what I was looking up was, if you're curious how we got there. Let's see. We, Susan and Billy were both in on those reallocations. And I believe the plan was any funding that was. So there was the 50,000 that was extra that was coming to Buncombe County, and on top of that, any provider that was underperforming relinquished fundings. The funding went to Jewish Family Services, Meals on Wheels, and Mountain Care. And I believe a portion of it did go to Pisgah Legal Services as well. So that's how we made everything 100% at the end of the year.
Excellent. Thank you for all your hard work, Zach. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Zach.
What I get paid for.
Then on to the Buncombe County Supplemental Aging Funding spreadsheet. You'll see that 2 providers, Unite and In-Home Aid, did not spend all of their funding. I'm personally disappointed with the county's decision to take back the money. I would have rather it gone to other agents programs, but it is what it is this year. Maybe that's something we can advocate for in the future. So roughly 89,000, a little over 89,000 went back to the county.
That's what was it spent that was allocated?
Yes, so if you look at the yellow, the at the bottom, it says total remaining. So,
Right.
yeah, there's 81 from in-home aid and then around 9,000 from Unite. But, I mean, when you read the monitoring reports, I mean, you have to realize the Unite just was a new provider this time. And then once they got started, guess what? They had the hurricane. So they were not able to get even their program up and running until after January. So. So while they didn't spend all of their money, I do feel like, had there not been a hurricane, things would have been different.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an understatement, I think. Could apply to a lot of things, but anywho, I was really pleased to be able to read the monitoring reports from Billy. Continuing with Unite, I mean, it was very positive. I mean, the participants decided they wanted to go on a walk together. So, I mean, it's like participant driven, which is really.
It's definitely participant driven, even if they changed their name. It was Vida program and they wanted to be Vida/Forever Young. So that's what they're gonna call it in FY26, and it's. I know that they've made great strides with this program. And when I was there, I met a couple of the participants and they're asking, when are they gonna begin again? So they're clamoring to get back because it was so meaningful to them. It's great. I mean, I was even impressed with, I get the monthly program activity reports and like the depth and breadth of what they provide is so interesting. Like even one time they were talking about they had a violin concert, like a younger person came and played the violin and someone else played an instrument, and they have really good speakers that, professionals that speak about depression or dementia or, I'm just looking at the program activity reports every month is just so interesting what they do.
Sounds like a wonderful socialization that they've accomplished there.
Yeah, they have accomplished a lot of socialization. The one challenge that they mentioned is they need to do more reaching out to the family members, because a lot of the participants take care of their grandchildren while the parents are working 1 or 2 jobs, and they want to make sure that the families know that this is so beneficial for the participants on so many levels, like socialization and improving their mental and physical well-being. So they're gonna do more educating of the families.
Have there been any conversations about maybe the need to set up some kind of ancillary daycare function? Because some of the families might not be able to afford daycare or have access to it.
No, they haven't. They didn't discuss that. When I was there, Norma relayed a story how a participant came with her grandchildren and she just told them that, and told the participant as well as the others that this is their time, that they need this time for themselves and I don't know. I didn't ask if maybe the participant had to leave, but with the grandchildren, but she just made it clear that this was their time for them and it's much needed for them.
Wellness time,
Mhm.
wellness time away from all that responsibility
Yeah,
and stress. Yeah.
right.
So I was happy to hear about that one. Edlin, it sounded like things, they were meeting their scope of work, but are having some administrative concerns or issues.
Yeah, they're meeting their scope of work, but, their invoicing was late at times and that was frustrating because I would email and call and I wasn't given an answer why it was late, but I'm gonna be working with, Ruby. You're the operations manager this fiscal year. I just think that there was a lot going on at Jerry's, like they had a new executive director that came in and they had a lot of challenges with people needing
Had increased demand
assistance
with the
with the
hurricane.
hurricane, so
Yeah.
so I think, you know, they were swamped. Is, you know, so,
Well, preventing evictions and utility interruptions is extremely important.
oh, yes.
So,
Those kind of services aren't just let me make a quick phone call and it's said and done in 10-15 minutes.
Right,
Don't want that bad.
right.
So any feedback on the units of service or any of the applications? I'm gonna make a note to send out the adjustment schedule.
I'm just glad we got money.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I am too. Especially from the county. I was not, I was trying to be positive, but you never know. So, yes. If anybody from the county is on listening in, we appreciate you. Thank you. Yeah. So. Now that everything is over for the prior fiscal year, it's time to start thinking about this current fiscal year. And we talked about trying to better articulate our priorities. I think that, and then the scoring tool in the applications itself. So I don't think this is gonna be a discussion that we can get through today. I think it's gonna be ongoing. So I'm trying to figure out how to sort of start this off, and Dan, I love your emails. Because you did send one back in March, talking about how you would allocate, and you said vital services were determined by the number of people served and the services capability to keep those people in their home and community. So, I'm gonna open the floor to conversation and, perhaps, see where we can go to to help folks when they apply.
I know we've discussed. Sometimes we were like, realized what we were granting one organization was a tiny bit of their budget. And some others, they really relied on it. It was in last year's question, application, did we request information like that, or have we just talked about it? I can't remember.
I think it was part of the budget.
Yeah,
that they filled out. It was HCCBG allocation, previous year HCCBG allocation, previous year organizational budget or organizational total.
So their whole budget was in that. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. I think it's important to know.
Yes, and which always brings me back to the same piece of conversation, same thought is that, block grants are great, but they shouldn't be your only source.
Right. Oh,
I mean, we say that all the time.
With respect to the idea of a hierarchy of need. There are some things that are fairly obvious, food, in-home aid. But when you get into the weeds of the reality of their life. Some of the social supports are equally as important. Transportation is important. What Unite does is important. And those things, well, perhaps not as obvious as you need food to eat and you need to keep utilities on. It's hard to, say, okay, let's come up with a priority, most important, least important, and when we have to cut off the things that are least important, it's assigning the category least important that I think gets difficult. Like Blue Ridge Pride. What they do is necessary.
Let me just say that I think I think this is tricky stuff, and I think you're right that this is, to apply sort of a checklist and say these folks do the most important work is hard. But I also think it's useful to have to sort of figure out how we what are the primary things we're looking for, and because I think there are primary things like keeping people in their home, keeping them safe, giving them access to food, but there are also services that are essential as supports to that, like transportation, legal services. And then I think an example of for Blue Ridge Pride is underserved populations. So I'm throwing those words out, thinking that's, we need to sort of figure out what is it that we're looking for, and then are there things we might information we might seek from folks that's different from what we ask now, that may capture that help us understand the what's going on and what priorities we should support.
So Dan, that sparked two things in my mind. The first is the Older Americans Act with the block grant talks about greatest economic and greatest social need. So that was one thought, but the other thought, kind of looking at Billy, is informational, meaning like the number of people served, men for gender, income, even zip code, maybe, because I would like to, I would want the county's funds to go across the county, not be, totally focus, say, around the city or something. I don't know. But I was looking at Billy because I thought the county was hoping to get more demographic information.
Yeah.
You're shaking your head. Do you know what that demographic would look like? Like,
Yeah, that's what, they were gonna do with the FY 26 funding cycle before, we knew that. Because some of the, grant programs, the county grant programs weren't funded this year. I mean, we were lucky to get funded, so before all of this happened, before Hurricane Helene, then, they're called community investment grants with the county. Then they were gonna have all the applicants fill out that demographic information and attach it to the application, like when they got onto the grant login site, they would see it, but since many of the community investment grant programs didn't get funded for FY 26, they're delayed till the FY 27, they didn't do it. So the county is looking to do that, but they postponed it.
well, I think that's an opportunity for these providers that got funding from the county to start collecting and making sure they have that kind of information. Because I'm a numbers person, so I'm like going, okay, what percentage are women, what percentage are over, I don't know, 80, or, I mean, like, On Track would do, or how many, what are some of the statistics, how many tax returns did they do? To get more of, this whole, what is it,
Results-based.
Results-based accountability.
And that, when there were, I think, as I recall, there were about like 9 or 10 questions, and they did have, the applicant, they would check like which underserved community they were serving, so you have to check all of those. But there wasn't one for older adults, and I remember telling the providers before we knew all this to put in older adults. And then there was another question that they wanted to know what zip code that the applicants was serving too. I remember those 2 questions.
Well, the zip code kind of helps you understand what part of the county
Right.
people are coming from. So I think that's something to start.
How many different zip codes are there in Michigan? Or in Buncombe County? Yeah, I did.
Zach, can you?
That sounds spin thing.
15 to 20.
Really? I had no idea.
Yeah, it shows got about 6, 28801, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think.
But then there's Weaverville.
Then there's, yeah,
28878.
278.
28787, and then,
The rest of the county.
29 zip codes in the county.
Can you name them all? We're on a roll there, I thought.
well, I used to know.
Really?
When I did resource coordination.
Maybe your hard drive's not.
Oh, Deborah might know them too, off the top of her head. She's good at.
It was a lot. I was gonna say about 18 easily. I mean, you've got Fairview, Black Mountain, and those are just their own zip codes. And the city all split up, 28801, 02, and then South 2704, Fletcher 287. I can't believe I remember those things, but anyway, there's a lot. And it would be interesting to see the zip codes as well as the areas being north, south, east, who's using the resources the most and where they're needed to go along with that age demographic. I have no idea how to incorporate that, but I think it would be a helpful tool for us.
And if that information was available, if that information was available, it would be neat to convert it to a map.
Yes.
I wanted I was thinking about this as we were talking, that an experience I had many years ago, um, when I was on a board that was doing community funding for the United Way, and the somebody decided it was just time to start over and take all these organizations that we had funded for all of these years and make them start at zero. And so here's what I learned, which was when we did that with the Salvation Army, they did their services were really vital to preventing homelessness, and they didn't have any place else to turn. And I was thinking about that just from this perspective, that we're sort of like that, is that where else would many of these agencies turn? They're already turning to other places. And the question being, what's our obligation to support people based on the fact that they don't have any other place to turn, or they have been long-term recipients of this funding? That's a rhetorical question. It doesn't require a response. But I think it's part of the planning, part of the thinking about where do we go and how do we support what's most important.
In some cases, some organizations may become highly reliant on us because they don't have access to other grant program funding for whatever reason, but that would be a question. I'm not familiar with foundations in the area and what your criteria might be. But that's something that I think would be interesting to explore, because some of the organizations that are, say, overly dependent, or what one might argue looks like over dependent on us, may be so for good reasons.
Well, the closest I can think in terms of what that thinking was is mountain mobility, is that we've talked about, we give them a chunk of money off the top, in part because there aren't, there isn't a lot of money to do that. They have other funding sources, including Medicaid, but that's one of those things where I think if you took away that money, what would that mean? A reduction in service?
But one thing that I think about is that for the HCCBG funding that comes from the Older Americans Act, there's 20 eligible categories. So why wouldn't providers that fit into those categories, why wouldn't they apply for HCCBG funding? Because they're eligible: adult daycare, day home, transportation, home delivered meals, congregate dining, information options counseling, mental health counseling, just why wouldn't they? Oh,
I can answer to that a little bit because I've seen providers come and go in all 4 counties. And I believe it's because of the steep learning curve and the hoops that they have to jump through to provide the home and community care block grant services, and my monitoring of them and making sure that they understand ARMS and making sure that they're filling out all the necessary forms and have everything in place. It's a steep learning curve that I do feel some people can be successful in, but other small agencies, it may just be too much for a small, 3 or 4 person agency.
Oh, I understand that. I'm just saying, the HCCBG providers that we currently fund, why wouldn't they keep coming back? Because, you know, they're one of the eligible categories from the older Americans Act funding, and they don't have that steep learning curve, so, you know, why wouldn't they apply for HCCBG funding? Does that make sense?
Yes.
I guess, and I might be totally off base, so, you know, give me feedback, but helping, I'm not saying that the folks that have grantees who have been with us for a long time, or any of the others, it's not like we're trying to discourage them. I think what we are trying to articulate is why we would fund one over another. And I think that's kind of where this is coming from. So, you know, we can't fund everybody, and I struggle with that. I really struggle with that. And I've had to communicate with folks who didn't get funding, and it's gut wrenching, really. As you know, everybody could use the funding. So in terms of moving forward with this conversation, I'm wondering if we might not just at least start with focusing on the scoring tools. And that would entail looking at what currently is in the application, which I'll be honest, I can't remember at this point in time. And I think it was Melissa that mentioned last time, that scoring tool tends to score how well people write a grant, and not necessarily the need within the community. So if there's a way that we can help the grantees share with us how they proceed, the needs that they see, and how their needs could be, the needs of the community that they serve would benefit from this funding and their services.
That's been my perception from beginning of my participation, when I've gone to the applications and I'm asked to score, how do I think this ranks? The answer there is always relative, or it's a question relative to what? To some degree, it's obvious some grant writers are better at it than others. So what am I missing from the presentation of the program that is dependent on a grant writer's ability to communicate its purpose and its need? And I think that's, to your point, Susan, that's the question becomes, how do we cut through that and develop a more nuanced and objective sense of what the needs are of people who go to, or, you know, ask for help, you know, from these programs, and how those programs actually meet that need. I think it's always easier said than done. You know, anyone who's done caregiving for, whether it's an older person or a disabled person, everybody has their unique needs. You know, it's not formulaic. It's like, okay, here's an old person, the person's 80 years old. They're gonna need, you know, a list of 10 things, they're gonna need 8 of them, and I can probably predict it without meeting that. And it doesn't work that way. So that's the challenge.
And I'll say through Home and Community Care Block Grant, we do have some, so as part of filling out the DOS 101 form, which is the client registration form, there are demographics that are collected through that, and I have a report that I can run. It doesn't get into the granularity of services needed or zip code or things like that, but it does have, you know, for instance, this past fiscal year, we served 2,041 individuals, 1,325 of those individuals being female. So we see that females are accessing our services more so than their male counterparts. We also see that 1,110 of those individuals live alone. So that's a social isolation thing. We have 1,595 who have identified as white. So the majority of our individuals using our services are white individuals. We have 3 statuses, well, at risk and high risk, and we have 1,260 individuals who are considered at risk. So those are like our major categories and maybe things where we can focus on.
How is that defined at risk?
It depends on your activities of daily living. So if you, activities of daily living and instrumental activities of daily living, I think the IADLs are a little bit less, the ADLs are the big ones, so it's like showering, toileting, things like that, whereas IADLs are preparing of meals and ability to bill pay, answer mail, things like that. But yeah, I do have some insight to demographics from the HCCBG point of view, but maybe not necessarily the net of where our providers reach and all of that. So I do think that maybe as a part of the application process, you can add in a question of which areas do you serve.
One question I would have would be, does the client have a family member or a friend to help them? You know,
Yeah.
filling out applications, figuring out what they need, versus how many people are out there self-advocating to whatever extent they're capable,
Yeah.
because that's a risk factor.
And that is something that's answered on home, housing and home improvement things, because you have to substantiate proof that there's no one else in the home able or willing to help with repairs and things like that. But I don't think it's a standardized question across all categories.
Because a caregiver might not, I'm gonna use the term family and friend advocate, as opposed to someone who works for a social services organization, they call themselves care management. Having a family or a friend to help someone makes a big difference in that person's identification of help that they need and their ability to reach out and ask for it. Because asking for help is rarely as simple as picking up the phone and saying, you know, I've fallen and I can't get up. It doesn't work that way. There's paperwork, there's a lot of bureaucracy to deal with, and that would be difficult for someone who's failing, even if it's just physical failing, like they're sick, because when you're not feeling well, your head's not working right. So it doesn't have to be, you know, someone on the cusp of dementia.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll add to the demographics is only 891 individuals identified themselves as at or below the poverty level. So that shows that the majority of our services are being accessed by those who are above the federal poverty line.
I have some indirect insight to that, in the sense that I had a conversation a few months back along these lines with someone who runs trusts for disabled people, you know, supplemental needs trusts, that kind of thing. We were talking about one of the Medicaid waiver program, you know, services for people with intellectual disabilities. And he may be, and this is someone who is a caregiver for a sister who is disabled. And he was saying that from what he has seen as someone who runs trusts, You know, some of those folks are very wealthy, come from wealthy families, and they're ducks in a row, a handful of them do not. But his perspective on Medicaid waiver programs is that the bulk of the people who have the administrative access to those services tend not to come from the poorest demographics. And that has to do with social capital and the ability or the opportunity to have access to someone who can help them, whether it's a relative or not. You live in a wealthier neighborhood, not necessarily a wealthy neighborhood, but a somewhat better off neighborhood where you have people who might have the luxury of time to notice that you're having problems, who might be able to reach out and help you. Or your family has the social capital to know to ask for help, or to even look to see if perhaps there's a source of help. Whereas people who are on their own, you know, unless they've grown up in circumstances where their families were on social services, it doesn't even occur to them that there could be help out there. So that might explain that partly.
Does the property line vary geographically? Like, what's property in Buncombe might be different than what's property in.
Oh, yeah, the federal poverty line does not distinguish, but,
That's very
yes,
broad.
there are. Higher wage disparities in places like Brevard and, Marshall and things like that, where you have. The wealthy individuals who are buying property there. And then the individuals, there's a wealth gap from your poorest individual to your highest, or your, richest individual. And, in between there, it's kind of, you know, getting by in a lot of ways, but the federal poverty line is, standard for the whole United States.
So maybe it's the federal poverty lot level versus the local. Be more straightforward, yeah, local, I don't know if we could call it poverty level, but local living wage or something, I don't know the correct terminology.
You know, I'm just sitting here listening, thinking of three things. One, would it be, could we call upon county resources like the planners to just help us identify without economic distinction, well, maybe with economic distinction, where what the demographics, what can they come up with in terms of just census data and physical location? A map that shows us where are the concentrations of older adults and where are concentrations of low income adults. That's one. The second is to find a way to begin to ask our providers to identify via zip code or other means where clients live. I just think that's would be educational for us, because what I'm hearing is we need to get good information that helps us understand needs and make the best decisions possible. The other thing I was sitting here thinking was, and this is a question for Billy, is would there be some value or opportunity for this committee for us to invite maybe even every provider to come to a meeting where we asked all of them to answer a couple of questions for us. You know, a way for us to get very focused responses from them about, and I don't know what even about, but we'd have to come up with questions, and it would accomplish a couple of things. It would give us information, it would give us a broader perspective, but also give them a sense of sort of who we are and what we're doing and what we need.
I've been thinking that, remember when we did the site visit? And I was thinking, and a couple providers have asked me if we were gonna do them again, because they wanna convey what they're doing to this committee. So, and, well, the providers liked having the site visits, only a couple people could go to each site. I felt like the information was distilled, so I like Dan's suggestion of having the providers come here and doing a short little presentation, or you could ask them questions. Like, as Dan said, come up with some questions so that you could learn about each provider, and the providers want you to know what they're doing.
I think it's a great idea, but also I think of, but Darryl, when do we have, when does the grant application process, like February?
Yeah.
Window that closes like February? And so you've got like maybe the February meeting and maybe sort of March meeting?
No, I'm thinking, I think what Billy's saying is like every month. So it's now July, so you'd have someone come in August, September, October, November, December.
And maybe do short, like do 3 or 4 in one meeting or something like that, like short little presentations.
So that's basically the assumption that they're gonna apply for aid in the next fiscal year also, right? Or not?
Yeah.
They're trying to justify their existence, so they're looking to the future, anyone that would come, I would think. I mean, I know just that they want us to know what they're doing, and there's value to that. But to me, anybody that's gonna wanna come and do this is because in the spring, we're gonna be allocating and they wanna show their work. It just seems like it's I mean, I understand what we're about the fall, it's informational, but the question is, does it come? How much does it play in the process of when the grants come through and make decisions?
But consistent applications every year. I mean, there's a group that repeats. I mean, as long as. 3 or 4 funding cycles. And it's a lot of the same folks.
And that's another question, that the thing we talked about in our last meeting was new people apply, haven't applied before. It was harder to get in the loop this year because things were limited. I think I saw it that way. But how do we, if we have new people apply and we fund them, that means we're not funding someone who we've been funding in the past, so their need is no longer valid. So it's really sticky wicket.
We're funding them less.
Yeah, but how do we? It's a club that everybody wants to belong to, and how do we decide what membership right to this? I mean, that's a hard thing.
That's
What we talked about last month, I think. We talked about things we're gonna be discussing, that was one of the things we talked about. How we come, what kind of criteria, how we do that.
In the past, not this cycle, but the cycle before, we had a couple of applications one from the YMCA, one from the YWCA, and another. There are a couple more that we chose not to fund. Another one was a hiking group, to take older people out for a hike kind of thing. And we didn't fund those programs because we didn't think they were vital enough. Swimming program, one was who goes hiking, poor people probably.
But that was for socialization.
Right, and socialization is important, but it didn't hit the same level of perceived need.
Sustenance and maintenance, sure.
Yeah.
Different.
Well, I'm looking at the time and I have 4:26. And I'm gonna be respectful of everybody and we're gonna close out at 4:30. But I think the county planners, I'm looking to Zach.
Yes.
Would they be able to, is there something that they already have?
I Dan must have been spying on me the other day. I actually was in a GIS meeting where I am getting a GIS license to make maps and show areas of high elder concentration and things like that. So once I get my sea legs with that, I will report back and hopefully have maps to show of Buncombe County of where older adults are and things like that, because the GIS uses census information. So it's only going to be as current as the last census, but we can at least get some things from that.
What does GIS stand for?
That's a good question.
Geographic Information Systems.
That's the one.
Thanks, Dan.
I think we've asked those questions to 427, Susan. Yeah,
I'm an aging specialist, not a planner.
Well, I'm sorry. I got off track.
But yes, I was actually really happy that Dan mentioned that, because that was the whole reason I joined that, because I wanted to do that for all of my counties to show where need may be and things like that.
They may really be valuable in terms of if these people that are wanting to get grants to provide services, if I don't know if all any of them operate like all of Buncombe County, or if they're, I don't really have a grasp on, like, do they serve just certain parts? But if we got that information to line up with that, that really would be a helpful criteria, the tool.
Well, I think I would like to put out a homework assignment to take the application scoring tools. We can still get into the application, can we not? Yeah, we can.
I'll ask.
I think we can, but look at those, look at that scoring language. And then start to think about the things that we talked about today. And how that scoring language might change to gather some of this information. Does this program, I don't know, provide services across the whole county, you know, something like that. I mean, I'm just grasping at straws here, but I think if we start looking at that scoring document, then.
Well, it might be good, I mean, being that we're early in the fiscal year, we may not have too crowded an agenda next month. Maybe something that we've looked at as something that we might look at as a group perhaps during the meeting.
Oh, yeah.
If our meeting's not too stuffed with other things, I mean, but early in the cycle, my mind, I tend to think would be, so.
No, I think next session, we can look at the scoring tool, and if everybody does a little bit of homework, and we'll have a lively conversation. And then for folks who weren't able to attend today, we can share with them and ask them to, we'll share the homework assignment.
Tonight.
Print out of that scoring tool, so what do we love?
Okay. Okay, we'll get it circulated along with the adjusted allocation for block grant.
Could we consider sometime in the fall doing something like having, or at least, well, having folks come from these agencies and answer and respond to 2 or 3 questions. And I think in line with I like the idea of looking at the scoring tool, but also think the more we understand from those who are on front lines, the better we're going to be in to make informed decisions.
Yeah, who are the residents they're serving? Who are the residents in the county that they're serving, and what, you know, can they give us a more, I don't know, boots on the ground,
Yeah.
you know, kind of a description?
And aside from more money, what are their greatest needs? I'd be curious. But we come up with some questions for them that can allow them to get us better informed.
Well, it also would give us a chance to encourage them to advocate too.
Yes.
Yes, yes. So I have 4:31. Any closing comments, questions, announcements? If not, I say we are adjourned. Y'all have a good- Thanks.
Thank you.